Hello, welcome to Priory Paddock. We've reached September now. The schools have gone back after the end of a fairly dismal summer holiday, and we've reached the start of meteorological autumn, and that is clearly reflected in the appearance of the paddock now. Most of the flowers that filled the paddock earlier in the year have gone over, although there are still a few around that have been flowering over a long period. I can still see some of the bright blue of the little alkanet flowers by the wall, and one or two purple mallow flowers, and the bright yellow pea-appearing flowers of the bird's foot trefoil. But looking at the bird's foot trefoil plant by the bush here, I can see very clearly the groups of seed pods, radial groups of seed pods, which look exactly like bird's feet, which is where the plant gets its name from. The trefoil, like the mallow and the alkanet, has been flowering for most of the summer. But there are a few flowers in here which are late summer flowers, and one of them is the very spectacular, dramatic looking corn sow thistle, which has rich green fleshy stems with dramatic leaves that look very much like dragon's teeth, and then heads of bright yellow, rather dandelion-like flowers, which often attract quite large numbers of tiny flies or beetles if the sun's out. And that's corn sow thistle, which is very, very much a late flowering, an end of summer flower. Another late flowering plant is the purple loosestrife. That grows very, very tall. The loosestrife we've got here is probably anything between 6 and 8 feet high, and has spires of I think it's 5-petaled, 6-petaled, dark pink purpley flowers that are beloved of bees. And I can see a bumblebee, a ginger bumblebee, on the spire I'm looking at here, which is near the pond. One other late flowering plant with yellow flowers is the dark mullein, and that has straight stalks with a single straight stem with clusters. The top of the stem is encrusted with 5-petaled yellow flowers, and that again is definitely a late summer flower. Much of the vegetation, both the soft growth, low growing flowers, and the bushes and trees, flowered much earlier during the year, and at this time of the year those plants should be showing the benefit in terms of fruit and berries and seeds, and that again is quite clear at the moment, in that we have some plants which are heavily laden with fruit, and others that sadly are not, and that has been definitely a reflection of the summer, the very poor weather we've had during the summer. Just inside the gate here, there is a hawthorn bush, And whilst there are some clusters of haws in the more sheltered parts of that hawthorn bush, the stems which stick out furthest have very relatively few haws on them. Last year the whole bush was weighed down with haws, but this year the more exposed stems, the blossom clearly was wilted before it could be pollinated, and so the haws are only in clusters in the more sheltered parts of the bush. This is reflected again with the alder bush next to it. There are some alderberries, but relatively few. The alder usually fruits heavily and is beloved of the birds, but this year there are relatively few elderberries. There are one or two decent clusters, but an awful lot of dark umbrella-like stems with one or two, just a few berries scattered around the outer rim of the ribs. A bit further up the paddock there are 3 bushes with leaves, they look a bit like the palm of a hand, which are tending to go red. They change to a very dramatic golden orange and then to a scarlet colour. This is Guelder Rose, and again the 3 bushes show very clearly the kind of summer we've had, in that the bush which is closest to the gate and is most open to the wind coming off the sea has almost no berries on it, whereas the 2 bushes that are in the shelter of the willow trees, and also sheltered by the 3rd Guelder, which the one with no berries on it, they are festooned, and the boughs are hanging down with the weight of the berries on them. And right next to the Guelder Rose bush by the pond is a very, very dramatic display of seeds on the tall and umbrella-shaped plants with pinky purpley stems and very, very heavily engaged with seeds at the top. This is Wild Angelica, and its leaves are going pale. The colour is draining out of the leaves with their pink stalks, and the leaves are going a pale yellow colour at the moment. Coming on further, we pass another hawthorn tree, which again is showing relatively few haws. Again, last year it was laden, but there are very few on it now, and what is very clear is that a lot of the leaves are turning colour and have been blown off already. And up by the well there is a buddleia, and last year that was, at this time of the year, it was covered in butterflies, and sadly this year we have seen very few butterflies at all. There was a peacock butterfly on it during the week, and there is a moth, I think it's a silver Y moth on it at the moment, a day-flying moth, but that's all. We've had relatively few insects, very to be seen this summer at all. Coming towards the well, I can see a collection of leaves in the bottom of the well, which shows very clearly the way the year is running. And if we come onto the boardwalk, I've come out towards, walking out along the boardwalk towards the pond. There are still a lot of small pink flowers on the top of very tall stems sticking up out of the pond, and these are marsh woundwort. It is a plant that was used, as the name implies, as a first aid item in times gone by. And beside the balk itself, there are some tiny pom-poms of tiny flowers, tiny lilac flowers, and this is marsh. No, it's not. This is water mint. This is water mint. And standing, looking towards the sea, in the gap on the boardwalk, I can see that our Brazilian giant rhubarb has fallen victim to the poor weather we've had recently. That we've had some very strong winds, and those have resulted in many of the leaf stalks of the giant rhubarb being broken down by the wind blowing on the big leaves. Well, that's what the paddock is looking like at the moment. It's on the cusp. We'll see next month how the year has moved on. Cheerio.